Greetings, Summoners. Cosmic here, and welcome back to another Battle Spirits Saga video. And today we have the top 16 breakdown from Liverpool, as well as, because it was on Limitless, we have the meta breakdown. So overall, what everyone played in the Swiss rounds, and you can see the conversion into top 16. Now, because a lot of these events were back-to-back, of course, the big obvious winners were Gale, Genbu, and red-green, or just red mid-range, depending on what spice they brought in with it. But you get to see there's actually a lot of other lists that were getting played in the meta and did quite well for themselves. And on top of that, for top 8, we had 7 different archetypes represented. That's insane. This is shaping up to be the best meta of all time for Battle Spirits, with a lot of play between each of the decks. Thank goodness for sideboard. So I will say, of course, I think Gale, Genbu, and red midrange are kind of the big 3 going into Atlanta and what you want to test with. But there's one deck in particular that everybody wrote off, but this is its 3rd top 8 showing in back-to-back events. And at some point, you gotta respect it, and you gotta start sleeving up and testing it and recognizing that it is a good deck. But we'll get into that in just a minute. Of course, we have to give a huge shout out to the champion, known as Sync Lyric in the Discord, but Kieran McNeil, who got there with Gale. And of course, funny enough, now that we've had an event won by the Fatal Beast, we had an event won by Red Midrange, and now we have an event won by Gale. So we are just kind of rotating it through and having all these different lists pop up, and the top 8s have just been an absolute amazing combination of lists to ultimately get there. And of course, Gale made it here. So is this now the solved version of Gale? Is this the best deck in the format? We have to wait till Atlanta to find out, right? I do want to give a huge shout out here again to the Forest Guardian, which has been really good. And the vanilla, the 5K for 1 starter deck vanilla, if I'm not mistaken, it's a starter deck, right? Just being a good early body for your green reductions, which you need to get on board, as well as just being able to stop some aggressive turns, right? Ant-Man, Hippocampo. There's a lot that it stops at 5K that you just set up the board and go, okay, well, now I can build up the rest of the stuff. Good job, little guy, and hold down the fort for us, right? So it is very much has that thought in mind too. It can help block out some of the stuff from Genbu, as well as just an early reduction that plays a large role. And then of course, from the spell side, this is something that we've get to see rotated in and out time and time again. The flood streams, the volcanic breaks, some have Ferrari/main or burning force, right? Those really do kind of rotate as needed, but ultimately this is the Gale deck that we've been seeing time and time again. There's still some other variations of it. I personally like the more just straightforward Gale, have a bunch of draw options instead of going to like the K package and some of the other like Gale is a engine, not an archetypes, sort of discussion. But a huge shout out to Kieran for this list. And of course, we also have these scoops in the sideboard, just more anti-aggro pieces that you can hold on to. And looping back to Beldegors is really good with it. More flood streams, more suppressions. And then shout out to the Maduke here as well, giving you a little bit more game against white control that, if you played Gale, you know that some of the white control decks can wall you out pretty good. So this is a very smart and awesome sideboard consideration to say, hey, I have the Dragonaga Assassin's main because you want a little bit of draw anyways, right? Gale does need draw. And then you go, okay, game 2 and 3, if I need it, now I have a Blood Curse opportunity as well. Now, generally, Maduka is going to get there herself because all their guys are going to be bigger than 6K. They have to play a magic card to take the cores off their guy, so they kill it, so Blood Curse doesn't trigger, right? If you've been playing the game long enough, you know about the whole Maduke shenanigans by now, but every time people have to pick it up and read it just to make sure, which I bet is going to happen in Atlanta and even the Pro Tour again. But hey, that is just what a great card that Maduke is. So I love this list. Again, I would recommend sleeving this up if you're testing for Atlanta or even the Pro Tour. I would not expect things to change too much from the more, green-focused Gale decks. Like, Gale is a archetype, non-engine, right, discussion. But, of course, there is going to be some flex spots in here depending on what you think the meta is going to be. So keep that in mind. Overall, I'm personally going to sleeve this up because I think I was close enough on the cards other than the Vanilla and the Assassin. That's like the core otherwise, and your spells are kind of whatever. So depending on what you think, it could change around a few things. I am also a big fan of still Feral Slash in the main because I think it's just a very good card right now. And of course, some Ritual Fires I think could play a big role. So definitely let me know in the comments below if you're excited to see a Gale list finally take it down and what variations you might put in the list to give it that extra edge going into Atlanta. Now, again, huge shout out to Kieran. I'm not going to try to take anything away from it, but oh my God, is that Luster in the finals? How is nobody talking about this, man? Woo! When I saw this, and again, was super hyped for Kieran. Love that our boy got there. Huge shout out to the Nexus podcast. His champion interview is up there. We're going to hopefully do a champion corner interview here on our channel as well. But baby Luster, let's go, right? It's finally, Michaela, it is your time to shine, girly. Let's go. Set 1, set 2 obviously struggled a little bit, but with the addition of Flagellum, it has become a very real threat in the meta, and I am so excited to see it get to the finals. And of course, I'm a little bit biased, but how insane would it have been to just see the community react if Luster actually got there? So again, Luster has been making several top 8s by now. Like, I hate to say it because it's like so crazy to say, but you got to kind of call Luster like at least tier 1.5 now, right? Like, it is so close to being like guaranteed like tier 1 meta that it's just not something we could have ever expected to see. But, you know, we have the early Fatal Beast package because you still need to rely on it for, again, I mean, just Dual Eagle and Hippocampus, great early draws, right? Phantasmal Paradise gives you the draws you need, plus getting your symbols on board. And then Flagellum, again, just being that key piece that says, hey, now Exhaust Nexus are shrinking for 5k. And that does so well against so many things in the field right now that there are going to be turns where you stick the Flagellum, swing, Exhaust Nexus, and go, look, you got to have an answer. You're losing the game on the spot. And I think that's exactly what Luster wanted on top of dodging Floodstream, which a lot of decks are playing. So again, love that we're seeing more and more of this. I do appreciate the gleam of hope still sneaking in there because getting even more draw, right? You don't need so many of them. You just need to see one and get your Luster engine going, and then you're drawing a bunch of cards, and then you're eventually going to get there. The other thing to note here is the Ryut in the sideboard. We talk about this a lot in various yellow decks. I talked about this in my Kai list as well. Sometimes you just need to make sure your key spirit is not getting disrupted by white, that they dream bomb it and then you immediately lose all your value, right? Because for those that don't know, if you dream bomb the Luster spirit, they lose all of those magic cards. They will go to the trash instead of going to hand. The Luster spirit does have to remain on the field to get the effect. So really love to see, like, hey, we got to protect our girls. This has got to stay here. And then it's going to be the key piece that we want against, again, primarily white control, but other decks, of course, have Dream Bombs because of the Gale matchup in the field right now. So just a universal good card to have. And then, of course, the other copy of the Dream Bomb in the sideboard, as well as the Floodstream. Now, the one thing I really do love about this list, and we've talked about it quite a bit, and I'm glad to see it here, there are boards that are going to line up where it's, okay, here's Michaela, here's Flagellum. Michaela has a Soul Core because you want to get the free magic, right? You swing with Flagellum, you do all your Luster stuff, your opponent has to waste a removal or saves or answers for that card, and then you go, okay, that's fine, sir, or ma'am, put this back to my hand. Let's swing with this Michaela, double heart you, GG. Like, nobody expects the double heart right now, right? Like, it's so good. And I think this is definitely a list that, yes, it does feel a little bad if you're going to reveal it off Michaela because then it's known information, but it's sometimes just good enough still because Michaela is always then going to be a backup threat your opponent has to respect while you're comboing off of them with the Luster side and getting all these magic values, right? So it's about diversifying your threats into making Michaela a really very real threat because she just keeps the Soul Core on her and gets that free magic anyways, right? 7 normally would be a lot, but hey, let's just make it free and go the distance. So huge shout out to Connor again. Obviously, I'm a little bit biased because we've come such a long way to see Luster here now make several top 8 appearances or top 16 as well in the other event. And it is just something that we absolutely need to respect. And again, I'm not ready to call it tier 1 yet, strictly because I haven't personally ran the matchups across the gambit yet. But the fact that it got to the finals in a very, very sweaty top 8, if you look at all these different lists, definitely respected. Huge shout out to Connor, and I'm absolutely in love to see that Luster gets there to the finals. And it's so close to winning. Moving on from there, we have top 4. And I asked Kieran and some of the other, guys what to call this list because it was also a similar list to what we saw at the Pro Tour. I'm pretty sure Aaron played it in the Netherlands Grand Open as well. And then, of course, shout out to Andre here finally making it into the top 4 with, it's not white aggro, but it's like white mid-range 3 drops go sort of thing, right? The ideal here is just that Hildur is just Valkyrie missed, 5, 6, and 7, but the fact is that it bounces anything, and you don't need a lot of reduction, right? Because it only has 2 white pips for the reduction side of it, that like an early Bullet Ray plus Peggy Scion is just going to get you there anyway. So especially when your opponent's trying to stabilize between one big hefty threat, the Hildur just gives you the opportunity to bounce whatever you need to. So a lot of bounce effects. Of course, we still have the 4 Dream Bomb, and then as needed, we have the Suppression as kind of a backup plan here for, hey, I want to swing out with this stuff, but at least I can leave one guy to be bigger, knowing that the suppression is going to get to like 7k or 8k pretty easily to be a good wall to block a lot of things out. In the early game, that's sometimes all you need. So huge shout out to this list. It's definitely one that, you know, we talked about Jet Wyvern at the Pro Tour quite a bit, just how it's come up, you know, just having the armor purple-white being super relevant. Ant-Man getting you cores is good. Assassin draw cards, like, it's just the good early game package that gets you there, right? And then, of course, when you need that last point of damage, you have both Derm Dyna and Joker who are going to chip away. Interesting thing here, noting is out of the sideboard, we have the Gregamar, which is going to have the armor red-white, and then also the Elk, which just gives you that kind of over-the-top stall out with ice shields and suppression to get that last point of burn damage as well. So really love this list. Absolutely one that I would need to sit down with and like just wrap my head around, but clearly got to top 4 and love to see kind of this evolution of, you know, with every new set, it's not always like, hey, here's white aggro, here's 2 new cards, and you go from there, right? You do have to kind of evolve these archetypes and change your strategy. And over the course of a few different events, I'm sure like they were all working on these lists together. One of them finally got into the top 4 slot to kind of show it off. So huge shout out to Andre and again, everyone else that helped work on this list to get to this point. But it is one that you just have to sit down and play it out to see how it goes. And I'm very excited to see kind of where this might evolve even further going into Atlanta. Moving into our top 8, we have Dan with the red mid-range, who had recently won as well. So not a lot of time needs to be spent on red mid-range because it's been talked about a lot. Again, I gotta give a huge shout out to Apollo Dinos. Love this guy, but it is just going to be the red deck of the format that just keeps on giving. The one thing you'll note here, though, is we did see more of the Ritual Fires coming main deck. We saw a cutback on Dragno King, and even the cut down all the way to just 4 Volcanic Canyon Nexus, because again, with Apollo, that then allows you to kill everything between 5k to 8k BP, and Ritual Fire kills 4k and less. So it gives you a very wide range of things that you can destroy. And again, sometimes you just need that early board control with a lot of the free spirits. You get to swing, and then Apollo can pop the blocker that your opponent might have been relying on to make sure you're swinging for game. So you will notice, again, no battlefield. We talked about this a little bit in some other videos where now it's getting to be the point of, do we have the red battlefield decks, which like top out at Dragno King and just try to play low to the ground, all the aggressive guys? Or do we shift into more of this big red style with Apollo, with Volcanic Canyon, not featured here, but probably make an appearance soon, Trident Dragon with the Ruby Sanctuary. So I'm so excited that for both red and purple are kind of the 2 big ones that are expanding out. We get to see now an aggro deck, a mid-range deck, and a control deck, or control/combo, if you know, to count Nova, in both of these colors because the card pool is getting deep enough. So again, I know it's not exciting in the sense that red, you know, did very well in set 1 and 2, and it's kind of just been a staple color, but I am personally really excited to see how these lists are going to expand even further as this meta develops, and especially as we go into set 4, which will really start to divide these, because we know based on how set 3 was designed and based on what we know from set 4 spoilers so far from the EVA collab and how they're breaking it up, that set 4 is going to be very heavy archetype driven, like we saw with the Guardian. So whatever red gets, you know, getting a double, you know, it's going to be Nova, but what Nova role Nova fills, we have to wait and see. But chances are it's going to be kind of some late game control finisher that we'd expect to see out of it once it has its double symbol. So huge shout out to Dan, has a great run so far with these events, and really looking forward again to seeing how red evolves even more. Now, of course, we got to talk about the tier, I don't know, 6 or 7. Bottom of the tables, not a good deck, horrible archetype, nobody likes it, most awful thing ever. Yeah, y'all load of BS, right? This is an archetype I keep going back to, and I have fought very hard for in the Discord and in person. This is now the 3rd top 8 that this list has got. Put some damn respect on purple in this metagame, right? It's time to give credit to purple. Please, I am begging you. So huge shout out to Howard, now being the 3rd person with a Curse Dragon combo style list, getting there. Because look, I don't know how y'all thought it was bad, but turns out Curse Dragon and Bishop is still an insane combo, and purple just has a good enough of the other purple cards to help you get there. Now, funny enough, like the opposite problem that yellow has, right? Yellow has no early game, or one early game that's just the Fabled Beast, and then you do whatever you want at the late game. where purple has only the real late game of Curse Dragon being the MVP and then kind of doing whatever you want leading up to that point, right? So it's like the two opposite ends of the spectrum in how their, archetype plays out. But again, the Curse Dragon Bishop combo really being an MVP with Black Lance at the top end to tie it all together. Just drawing us cards, just being cursed, good stuff. And then Hippocampo making us a very surprise appearance here because it turns out just Blessed is good. We've seen this time and time again that just getting an extra life or two can be a huge deal. And of course, Beldegor just being that other early game blocker that we want and being able to come back from the grave, get the additional on summon effect, destroy something. Very, very good to see. And then, of course, when we have Deadly Balance, then we can also sacrifice our 4s and 5s during combat to make sure we get the Beldegor when we need to. Also, huge shout out to the Scoop Owl in the sideboard. Again, just primarily anti-aggro, lets us get back our Beldegors again and lets us survive long enough to see that Bishop Curse Dragon combo, which is going to win us the game. As it turns out, with the way Gale plays out, because they want to, evolve their board state to play multiple of the Gale things so they can get more cores, so they can then make bigger plays in the following turns, a Bishop Curse Dragon is still going to get them dead 10 out of 10 times. So, huge shout out to Howard. I love to see that purple soul control, or at least purple late game, is being, hopefully by now respected. It did 3 top 8s. I don't know how much more you guys want, all right? Purple's a real color. I'm sorry. It's time to wake up. So hopefully by Atlanta, people will be picking up on it, because if you go back to the conversion table, yes, purple, this specific archetype was not in its own cutaway. The costume arts I used for purple mid-range was a different list. This had a low representation and then shotgunned itself all the way to top 8. Please, I'm begging you. I know it's not exciting in the same way red's not exciting, but it's time to sleeve up purple, and it's time to put it in your testing gauntlet for Atlanta and for the Pro Tour. Purple is still here. Purple is still good. It's time to wake up. Play purple. All right, that was my PSA for this video. And then also, shocker, because as everyone expected red to kind of be the big player of this format, huge shout out to Aofi, I believe is how you pronounce it, or C in the Discord. Make sure to give her a huge shout out if you see her in the community Discord. But they played just good old white control. And this is like the white-red, more akin to like the red-white axe spider that we saw in the previous format, where you just have like Volcanic Canyon to dig for stuff to then help make your Nexus removal stuff even better, right? So it was kind of the natural evolution of that one. And of course, just in this field where everyone's still trying to, especially yellow, right? Getting to also then target yellow by having all the Burning Force under the sun, you can keep them off their game plan a little bit longer to hopefully get to see your Derm Dyna first and finish off the game that way. Still a very rough matchup, all things considered. This one is definitely more favored into yellow than some of the more traditional white control lists. And then, of course, you just stomp out red because you are the white control deck. What more needs to be said about that, right? You have so many more things in the sideboard that you can lean into even harder to protect those matchups, but overall, really nice to see a white control list make it into the top 8. Huge shout out to C again, because it was another one of those decks. Everyone's like, okay, well, white is also, under the table. No one's talking about it. No one's going to bring it, all that good stuff. But we did get to see one sneak into the top 8, and they actually got to play red against the last 3 rounds of Swiss. But again, that's kind of how it goes, right? You're expecting to be a red heavy field because it just did so well in the previous event. Red is going to still prey on a lot of the yellow decks who are likely winning their first round. So as long as you win the first 2 rounds with a white control deck, you're most likely going to be in a very healthy bracket that's just going to give you free wins into top 8. Just kind of how it goes sometimes if you make the right meta call, right? We see this in Pokemon, we see this in Flesh and Blood, we see this in a lot of card games at the end of the day. So what this means for Atlanta, who knows? I think there's still going to be the big 4. I think that white control, it's still better than blue, right? I got to say that. So, I'm definitely confident in saying that white is a top 16 list, but with a couple lucky matchups along the way, I'm absolutely sure that you could sneak into top 8 with it again. Depending on how you might want to change up this list, but I think it's a very good shell to use going forward. So another one that I would say, definitely tinker around with this one. Let us, know what your sideboard plan is for in the comments and what you think is going to be most important going into Atlanta. But this is one that, again, I think a lot of people kind of slept on, even with the emergence of red, that could find itself in a very good spot leading into this next event. And then, of course, the last one to round out top 8. Whew, so many different archetypes is assigned with the Genbu, or just Fable Beast goodness. And this is about as straightforward as it can get, right? The one thing that's different here, probably for a lot of lists, is the Thorn Prison. Thorn Prison, making sure your Bless can get through, is pretty good, it turns out. Also a good controlling element. Not much needs to be said there. Lots of 4-ofs, very consistent. Does what Genbu wants to be doing, right? I will also say I appreciate the Flagellum and Thorn Prison side of it, just because you get the luster back, allows you to be aggressive. Then you have it for a controlling option as well. That's pretty cool. But again, there's no Michaela in this list, so you do have to pay out the cores for it, which if you're connecting with Blessed or if you have Cathedral that's triggering, you're going to have the extra cores for it, right? A lot of times, if the games go long with the Blessed Cathedral decks, you're going to have an unholy amount of cores to help bring you to those cards that you want to play, like chaining together multiple Exhaust Nexus or Thorn Prisons. So huge shout out to the Genbu making a top 8 appearance as well. Not too much needs to be said about it, as we've covered this in previous videos, but overall very solid. And again, just straight 4s across the board, wanting to be as consistent as possible. Hey, that's the way to do it sometimes. And then, can we give a huge shout out to Kay making the appearance? And Tom, man, I can't even begin with this list. I love it. I love just how spicy it is, right? So again, for those that don't know, we've seen a lot of these K lists popping up time and time again that just says, hey, I'm going to play a lot of off-color stuff or just rainbow, get a lot of cards back in the late game, and then just win through pure card advantage that way. A lot of these decks will always have the Belgor and Scoops just to make sure you survive, right, until the end game. But this one in particular decided, hey, let's use Gale as an engine. And the one thing that really caught me off guard, right, other than the 3 Toki 10 at the top end or Feng Huang, it's just Toki 5 and Hurricane Highlands. And it's like you're hoping that those two kind of stick there. But if you're playing a K list, you're going to come to a point where you're like, oops, I drew 5 or 4 cards in this list because there's no blue. And you go, okay, I'm never getting Toki back again, right? So I think the idea is that, hey, you only need 1. And then the second, the Feng Huang is going to give you the extra 3 cores. And by that point, you've ramped enough where it doesn't matter anyways. And we see this a lot in the white version of the deck that I put on the channel and a couple other, we play at the Pro Tour, stuff like that, where it's like, hey, I just want an elephant to die. The card draw is nice, don't get me wrong, but like I want the cores. So a lot of those times it's like you let the first elephant die, you don't care, get the 3 cores, and then it's so much easier to play out your game plan. So is Gale just gonna be better because it doesn't require something, your opponent doesn't have to kill the elephant sort of thing, like you just play the Toki and you immediately get the cores? Probably, and it's also a good Beldegor loop. We've seen this time and time again, how it can help stabilize against the aggressive strategies. But then again, huge shout out to like the one of Ginger Bloom, the one of Rubius, the one of Snowbit, right? Just being those extra blockers that also draw that you get back for free off K. And then also the Aravada, right? The Void Lord surprise at the end, because hey, sometimes you just want to discard a Void Lord and then just get this huge bomb back when you play the 10 cost and go, okay, here's my Void Lords coming back, baby, let's go. Super spicy. I really wish I knew how many times that they got somebody with the Void Ogre for game, because I think that's just way too fun to not play in the list. So again, huge shout for that. And then it goes back to the Magic, right? Star Blessed Draw, Absolute Ice Shield, Thorn Prison, Ritual Fire, Dream Bomb, Volcanic Break. Those are all just kind of stock cards that we've come to see time and time again. And then also shout out to the spicy one of Double Heart making its appearance here, which can be a surprise, haha, got you for your opponent. So love to see that. And with that, that is our Liverpool top 16 video all wrapped up. Let me know what you thought about these absolutely spicy lists. And please, I'm begging you, sleeve up purple. It is time. Here you can see it in the chart again, right? There is no Curse Dragon in that chart because it's in that other category. And we've seen this time and time again now in multiple top cuts where purple core control or just purple combo at the top end gets there. Again, your early game, do whatever you want, right? It's the opposite problem of yellow. You have too many options for your early game in purple. But that late game curse combo, still MVP in this format. So, all right, that is, again, the Liverpool. Very excited to see where this goes. We're going to have more Versus videos on the channel soon. We're going to have the Liverpool Champions Corner interview with Kieran as soon as we get time to do it, and just a lot of good stuff coming in the near future. So with that, my friends, stay safe, stay hydrated, and we'll see you in the next video. Cheers.